It's Tuesday, the 1st of June 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. In today's headlines, the OECD warns that Australia's economic growth success is under threat by the slow rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. Plus, the Prime Minister hints at a travel bubble beyond New Zealand. Christian Porter drops his controversial defamation case against the ABC. And could a Kennedy end up the US ambassador to Australia? Our lead story today, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, has warned that the Australian economy, one of the best performing in the world, is vulnerable to a large outbreak of COVID-19 and new restrictions. The OECD released its Global Economic Outlook overnight, forecasting Australia will expand by 5.1% this calendar year. While government spending over the past 15 months has held the local economy in good stead, that could all come undone without a pickup in the pace of vaccinations. Of the 45 countries measured by the OECD, Australia ranked 36th in terms of the number of vaccines delivered. It came as another 6 new community-transmitted COVID-19 cases were reported in Melbourne yesterday, taking to 11 the number recorded over the previous 24 hours. Victoria's acting Premier James Merlino said the next few days would be critical to determining when the lockdown would end, though given the spread of coronavirus and the speed at which it transmits between people, reopening the economy anytime soon looks unlikely. The OECD coincides with business leaders increasingly pushing for a faster rollout. Some companies, such as Qantas, are considering offering rewards to people who get vaccinated. Others, such as Westpac and Woolworths, are giving staff time off to get a jab. The OECD has highlighted what a knife's edge Australia sits on: a few bad days of COVID-19 cases, and the whole economy could be brought to a standstill. It's why governments, regulators and business want people to get vaccinated. In overseas news, the main story was about the warning for Australia from the OECD. The group also released its global growth forecasts and expects the world economy will return to pre-pandemic levels by 2022. The global economy is expected to expand by nearly 6% this year. The stronger outlook means governments can move from blanket emergency support to more targeted measures, the OECD said. Wall Street was closed overnight for the Memorial Day holiday. In case you're interested, Memorial Day commemorates military personnel who died in service. And if you live in the United States, it's also the unofficial start to summer. European markets were also quiet. London's FTSE was closed for a bank holiday. And China will allow couples to have a third child in a bid to boost the country's birth rate and lower the average age of the population. Up until 2016, most families were only allowed to have one child. That was relaxed to 2 children 5 years ago, and soon it will be 3. Bloomberg Economics has forecast that the number of people in the world's most populous country will peak in 2025 if the current limits remain. There were only 12 million new babies born in China last year, the lowest number since 1961. Locally, Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his New Zealand counterpart Jacinda Ardern met yesterday with the two presenting a united front on China. Mr Morrison said the country's strong partnership would not be undermined by others who wanted to create divisions. Ms Ardern said Australia and New Zealand were in exactly the same place on issues of trade and human rights. Mr Morrison also said a travel bubble beyond Australia and New Zealand and into the Pacific Islands was a real possibility. At the same time, Qantas boss Alan Joyce was speaking at a travel forum, and he predicted that flights to the UK and the US could follow because of the success of their vaccination programs. Former Federal Attorney General Christian Porter has dropped his defamation action against the ABC and journalist Louise Milligan over an article which Mr Porter said implied he raped a 16-year-old girl in 1988. He strongly denied the allegations. All parties agreed to not pursue the matter any further, and no damages will be paid. Mr Porter, who has been politically damaged by the controversy, yesterday said he did intend to contest the next election. Data analysis group Newey has downgraded its financial year revenue forecasts for the second time in 2 months, triggering another slump in the group's share price. The share price of last year's biggest IPO fell 18% yesterday and is down 70% since hitting a peak in January this year. Chief Executive Rod Vaudrey said that despite missing forecasts since going public last December, he was confident about the group's long-term outlook. I'm not so sure that investors, though, are all that confident about Mr Vaudrey's long-term outlook. And there were media reports aplenty yesterday that Caroline Kennedy, The remaining child of assassinated US President John F. Kennedy was in the mix to be the next US ambassador to Australia. The report said that President Joe Biden wants to appoint close allies to key roles to help rebuild America's engagement in the world, and Ms. Kennedy was an option. The job has been vacant since January when the former ambassador Arthur Culverhouse resigned before the Biden administration took office. Ms. Kennedy is the oldest and only surviving child of President Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy Onassis. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning. And if you'd like more detail and more stories, search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. We also release a daily interview. Today, we're talking to alternate lender Lumi about business confidence in SMEs. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.